prepared by our staff, and I thought the food we serve is delicious and very tasty for our members. So I'm absolutely not aware. I just want that to be on record. And if there was such a push, certainly Senator of Nyamira, Commissioner representing Senate, is not one of the members pushing the outsourcing of catering services, Mr. Speaker, for members of Parliament. I just wanted that to be on record.
That information was meant to be to you, but will also affect the entire membership of this House, Senator Cherargei. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I want to confirm is it is the highest level, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the Commissioner, Senator Okongo Mugeni, Senior Counsel, Mr. Speaker, should be informed, and I hope, because we will resist any such move. Mr. Speaker, secondly, Mr. Speaker, I'm informed that the American ambassador, Megan Whitman, has resigned. I want to pass our deepest appreciation for her tour of duty in the country and for being supportive to government, Mr. Speaker. You remember under her tenure, the Kenyan government was able to work closely with the Haiti government to bring peace and security. Mr. Speaker, and also he organized, Mr. Speaker, Ambassador Megan Whitman, the U.S. State
Senator
visit.
Cherargei,
Yes.
I want you to confine your contributions to what yesterday you were reminded by the Honorable Senator Boni about the relevance of your comments to the motion at hand.
But you know, Mr. Speaker, U.S. is one of the biggest donors to elections in this country. She was very instrumental. She was among the people who are in bombers with you. I'm surprised. You should be appreciated.
As you do that,
yes,
let it be
I'm tying up because, Mr. Speaker,
this particular bill.
Yes, I'm tying up with what is happening in the NADCO, the genesis of NADCO. You know, the embassies and the government, U.S. is one of the heaviest funders, not only to peace and security, but to elections in this country. And she was very supportive, and we wish her well in her tour of duty. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, you have to appreciate the cost of election is very expensive. Last year, and that has been my argument, Mr. Speaker, the last election of 2022, Kenya spent a whooping 35.8 billion Kenya shillings. That translates to 2,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker, per voter, which is very expensive across the world. 2,000 per voter, which is too high, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must agree that the election business in Kenya should not be live and dead. You are in the U.S., you saw people voting by mail. You saw people accepting results graciously. And I'm happy in the U.S., Mr. Speaker, and I heard my brother Senator talking about Biden inviting Donald Trump to the White House. Was it today? Or today? And therefore, we want peaceful transition where people go into an election, contest, you lose fairly, you accept. I think what is happening, Mr. Speaker, and you have noted in some of your comments, that there is deficit of trust among African countries and more so Kenyans. We don't trust each other. I think the only time Kenyans will trust each other about elections is when Jesus Christ is the returning officer. Because the fact we are becoming too prescriptive on election laws in this country. We are becoming too subjective to the election laws in this country. We are prescribing even how a returning officer should sign the declaration form at the polling station, at the county tallying center, at the national tallying center, Mr. Speaker. We are aware of how we don't have trust. It happened in 2007, 2008, Mr. Speaker. The tampering of elections, the problem in this country is lack of deficit to the institutions we have. People don't even trust Parliament. They don't trust judiciary. They don't trust executive, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it behooves to us that the institutions that the Constitution have built, we should trust, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the cost of election is very high in this country. Even as we talk, Mr. Speaker, as of today, the pending bill that IEBC has that has not paid their people, the matatus, the people that provided service and goods, stands at whooping over 2.05 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. While I agree, Mr. Speaker, with a number of, I think this proposal is just a cleanup of the Elections Act, because having served as the chair of JLAG in the last session, Mr. Speaker, we did a number of amendments, elections, push and pull, between the National Assembly and the Senate. Mr. Speaker, outside the basic laws on basic issues Kenyans affect. The highest legislated matter in this house and in this country is the issue of elections. We go to an election, we notice a problem, we come back and legislate. The other day, we didn't trust the ICT, the IT to use of technology elections. Now we want to trust it. The other time we were told there was Jose Carmago somewhere. The other time we were being told the satellites servers are in France, and you remember the famous word Fungua server. Mr. Speaker, others were saying it is in the US. There is time difference, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is important that we need to agree. I'm happy in one of the Section 2 of the Elections Act, we have amended to include ID as identification as Kenyan passport, which is good, and the registration of candidate. I think those are cleaner. Mr. Speaker, on clause number 3A, is suspended. I agree that during by-election or during referendum, somebody who is not a voter or who has not registered that time during referendum and by-election, the registration and opening and inspection of voters' register should be suspended until the by-election and referendum is done. And Mr. Speaker, I agree. I think in Mutula Kilonso's case, when he passed on, the victim of such was the sister to the current governor of Makueni, since she was not registered as a voter. So it is now better that if a by-election is happening in Vihiga or in Banisa, for example, if I come from Banisa but I vote in Nairobi, the law should not allow me to participate in election of Banisa. And I agree with this provision, so that we don't have ambulance chasers for elect parliamentary seat. You remember the famous political ambulance chaser is one by Babayao Ferdinand Waititu, where he was contesting in Embakasi, when unfortunately the former MP was killed, that used to come from Kiambu, who used to work as a unionist. He left here and went and contested. When it came an opportunity of becoming the governor of Kiambu, he left here and went to contest. So this provision will cut lane. In fact, Governor Sonko was also trying to be an expert, where he was now, after failing to run here, he wanted to run in Mombasa. Yet I am sure that he was a voter in this city. So we need to ensure that even people like Senator Kalwale would want to run for governor. We don't want somebody who is running in Nairobi as an MP decides to wake up one day and run for governor in Kakamega, yet those people don't know who you are. So let us bring sanity and hygiene in our politics, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of Section 6, elections before the date of election, I agree within 60 days is sufficient to rectify your particulars as a voter and also to give you a chance. Even in by-election, like now what is happening in Banisa, there is a ward in Kakamega that has similar challenges after the MCA was killed. The issue of referendum, I agree that 60 days is sufficient period to rectify your particulars as a voter in that region, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fourth point that I wanted to make is in Section 27. Mr. Speaker, within a coalition political party, for example, Azimio, I remember, Mr. Speaker, before we went to elections of 2022, some of us, we were being pushed. I remember Otsotsi was in the National Assembly. We were being pushed to amend to create what we call coalition political party. Mr. Speaker, and the proponents then were in power, and they came up with something called Azimio coalition. And I'm happy when it came to the new session, the definition of coalition party became a challenge. And we are now where we are in the beginning, because now with the broad base, those things are no longer relevant. Mr. Speaker, and I think when a coalition agreement should be submitted, a copy, to register political parties. Mr. Speaker, are you aware, in the last session, it is only Kenya Kwanza coalition agreement that was given to register political parties that was made public. No one made public the Azimio coalition agreement up to today, unless there is contrary information outside there. So we want everybody to be equal before the law, Mr. Speaker. No, you know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Otsosi was in the lower house. He could not have been aware of what was happening. Mr. Speaker, now he's in the upper house. He can know what.
You know how to catch the eye of the
Yes,
Speaker.
Mr.
Senator
Speaker.
Cherargei, proceed.
As a deputy party leader of ODM government, he should hold resources, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are advising is to clean up, Mr. Speaker, and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that it is delivered. Mr. Speaker, Senator Otsosi would have allowed me to quickly finish so that when he's contributing and can make his comments. Mr. Speaker, in Section 34, I agree. Mr. Speaker, can you believe you get an MCA in Wajir from Nairobi. He doesn't know even where Wajir County is or County Assembly. You get in Kericho, in Vihiga. These political slakings and slakings must be stopped, Mr. Speaker. I agree. We cannot let us nominate women, people living with disability, that come from that ward, from Kisumu, Mr. Speaker. From Mawendo, Papa Udit, let that be registered there, Mr. Speaker. We don't want people who smile before the political party leaders and they are being vetted in hotel rooms to have opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are aware of political party leaders who vet people in the hotel rooms and going to Santorini, Mr. Speaker, to get opportunity to be nominated, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is it right for my friend Senator Cherargei to claim that it is bad for people to smile before party leaders? Does he imply that people are supposed to cry before the party leaders?
Senator Cherargei, that particular point of order insinuating on the part of the leaders of political parties is not the proper language to utilize in the House.
Mr. Speaker, let me rephrase, Mr. Speaker, that some people, some individuals, it is good to smile to political party leaders, it is good to get angry at them, but I'm saying some political party leaders, and you know the guilty are always afraid, Mr. Speaker, the Bible says what? Some political party leaders are known to vet the nominees, Mr. Speaker, in hotel rooms and in Santorini, Mr. Speaker. We are aware, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order,
I'm saying some,
Beatrice.
Mr. Speaker. I'm
Senator
using
Cherargei,
the word some.
Take your seat. There's a point of order from Senator Beatrice.
Just before that statement, is it right for the senior ranking member, the Senator of Nandi, to insinuate that it is only women and people living with disability that can be nominated? As it is today, the current CS of Finance has been a nominee from the National Assembly, and that was a man. So it is not only women that are nominated. Even in this House, we have Senator Chimera, we have Senator Mbogo, and they are not women. And, Honorable Speaker, some of us, like me, is nominated. You cannot say I got my nomination through a smile. I'm beyond a smile, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Cherargei, the chair directs that you confine your contributions, check your language, and withdraw the statement that make reference
Mr.
to
Speaker,
members
Mr.
having
Speaker,
been vetted in hotel rooms. That is not
Mr.
parliamentary.
Speaker, I've said some.
And confine your contributions to proper language. Senator Cherargei, that is the directions from the chair. I'm warning you so that you do what is right as a ranking member of this House.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, can I rephrase? I've said some political party leaders. I didn't say all, Mr. Speaker. And number two, I've said Mr. Speaker, I have been in politics long enough to know some of these things, Mr. Speaker. I might be young, but I know so many things that many people don't know. And Mr. Speaker, I want to rectify, anybody can be nominated by political parties to serve as senators, members of parliament, and I agree with the information by my Senator Ogola. If you know you are nominated, Speaker, I'm saying, I'm calling out politicals to nominate, they go for other conditions, which my learned senior and law lecturer smiles and knows because I have shared with him, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because my time is spent.
Honorable members, order. Allow Senator Cherargei to conclude.
Let me conclude. Mr. I have abandoned long time ago my sister. The commission shall appoint a place on the issue of presidential declaration of results, Mr. Speaker. I agree the chairman of IEBC should have opportunity to declare the president-elect, Mr. Speaker.
Order,
because,
Senator
Mr. Speaker, we don't want to go, Mr. Speaker, where the Kenyareport tried to do. I agree that the person who should declare the president-elect and deputy president-elect should be the chairman of IBC. We don't want to go to Kenyareport debacle, which almost brought this country to instability, Mr. Speaker. So I agree with your wisdom that you did bring that at least, Mr. Speaker, the IBC chairperson should declare the president-elect and deputy president-elect. On the issue of electronically transmitting results, we are in the era of technology. 2 hours is enough. Let us know, Mr. Speaker, if we are not careful with the current Gen Z with technology, we can always know who is winning or who is not winning. So I agree on the issue of electronic publishing of results. We are tired, CROs and county can be hijacked as they come through Kericho somewhere in Awasi, and they can disappear with the results, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of auditing, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of auditing, I agree after 1 year we should audit. I agree that your committee, JLAC, should give us what was the outcome of presidential and national elections within 1 year. That should be sufficient to give us audit, Mr. Speaker. This is a very good legislation. One thing I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, you remember in conclusion, there are a number of MCAs who have been complaining that they were not given chance, Mr. Speaker. We need to rectify on the issues that are within elections. Let this country have trust in our institutions, Mr. Speaker. I agree, Mr. Speaker, with your senior colleague who said that even nominations should be done by ABC, Mr. Speaker. Some of the people, some of good leaders have been lost. Can I get 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker? Some of the people have lost their seats because of bungled nominations, Mr. Speaker. Many people who have seen nominations will tell you it's not an easy process. And where you come from sometimes, Mr. Speaker, I will make my position known during voting. I thank you.
I now call upon Senator Sotsi to contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also make my contribution on this very important bill, the Election Amendments Bill 2024, that is a product of the NADICO process. And I'm happy that this House has already dispensed with the Political Parties Act that is now supposed to go to Committee of the whole House. And now we are handling the Election Amendments Act, Bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the provisions in this bill, although a few others I have reservations. And let me start by looking at clause 3, which talks about the people who register as voters during the by-election process should ideally not be eligible to contest election in that electoral area. You remember we had the long-drawn case of Keith Kilonzo, which many people are questioning why she was not able to contest. But I think it's important that during that period, people who are keen to be candidates should be stopped. Because why at the last minute, Mr. Speaker? So I think that's a very progressive amendment, and I support it. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support Honorable Cheregei's statement that election in this country is very expensive. We conduct a very, very expensive election process. And I think the issue of cost of conducting an election in this country must be looked at, so that we don't make election very expensive and therefore make other very important national programs derail because of election. Mr. Speaker, let me also what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, where we don't have IBC. It is a pity that this country does not have an IBC, Mr. Speaker. This is a very risky IBC commission. What we have is an IBC secretariat. We don't have an IBC commission. It is important that the courts also have to take judicial notice of what is happening in the country. Because without an IBC, Mr. Speaker, we run the risk, major risk, constitutional risk in this country. I am surprised that even a mere decision of coming up with a selection committee, people will serve maybe for 3 months. It has dragged in court, and even after the court made a decision on that, some other people rushed to court. Why is the courts entertaining all this? They need to take judicial notice of what is happening to the country. They need to take judicial notice of the fact that unavailability of IBC is a serious problem, a serious risk that can lead to a constitutional crisis. So I think it's important for us to have an IBC so that the by-election, the people of Banisa, the people of several electoral areas who do not have representative, they can have representative in those areas, Mr. Speaker. Some are even not able to get services because they don't have either an MCA or a member of parliament. Going back to the bill, Mr. Speaker, on clause number 18, which is seeking to amend section 33 of the Act, the issue of gazettement of names of political party candidates and independent candidates to contest in an election. I think this is important so that these candidates are properly gazetted, and even the independent candidates are properly gazetted before an election. Also, Mr. Speaker, the amendment to clause section 34, which are contained in clause 19, which talks about the people nominated must be natives of those counties. I think this is important because we have seen scenarios where people come from other counties and are nominated in another county. That effectively discriminates against the locals of that area. For example, if you bring, I know some time back we had in my county someone from Kisii County who was nominated in Vihiga County. I know in Bonhalwale's county, Kakamega, we had someone from Northeastern and Siaya who were nominated in Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, this amendment will heal that. And also the requirement that in nominating candidates, we must take into account the wards, the balance of wards in that county, so that we don't have all nominated slots going to a few wards and you find the other wards being left out, Mr. Speaker. So that is a very progressive amendment and I support it. Mr. Speaker, on clause 20 of this bill, which is seeking to amend section 38 of the Act, that provides that the polling station shall be gazetted at least 3 months before the date of an election. Mr. Speaker, this is very important so that we don't have a scenario where we have late gazettement of polling station that creates confusion. And also we do not have scenarios where during court processes we were told that some stations were involved in the election. So this is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that at least 3 months before the general election, we must gazette all the polling stations in a particular electoral area. If you look at clause 22, which is seeking to amend section 39 of the Act to state categorically that the Commission shall determine, declare, publish the results of an election immediately after the close of the polling station, and the results declared at the polling station shall be final. Mr. Speaker, this is a very progressive amendment, and it is important that we also have transparency in those polling stations so that we have an election observers, we have political party agents, and all the people who are supposed to verify. And Mr. Speaker, going back to the issue of agents, you know, Kenya is among the few countries which are very innovative in very strange ways. You know, if the electoral agency is performing its role very well and doing its work very well and transparently in an accountable manner, then there should not be any burden on candidates to have agents in polling stations. It should be the role of the Electoral Commission But this idea of having agents in polling station to verify the results is a clear confirmation that our electoral system has something wrong. And that clearly puts a lot of pressure on candidates. You can imagine if you are a presidential candidate in this country with about 45,000 polling stations, putting like 2 people in each polling station, that's already 90,000 people manning your results. And you are paying each maybe 5,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, even before you do put your name on the ballot, you should already have a budget of 500 million shillings just to manage agents. Mr. Speaker, that is ridiculous. That is undemocratic. So we need to reform. There is no pressure for candidates to have agents in the polling station because the whole process is transparent, the whole process has clarity, and the whole process is protected by a functional commission. Mr. Speaker, I am also concerned about the amendment in section 39, subsection 6, the one that Senator Cheregei was referring to. The chairperson of the commission shall declare the results of the election of the president in accordance with Article 138(10) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is where we have a problem. And this is one amendment, one area that I will be seeking amendments. The problem with the Cherera 4 was that they were complaining that they were not involved in final verification and review of the results before they were declared. Mr. Speaker, I think this provision must be enhanced further to say that the commissioners will be involved fully before the chairperson of the commission declares the results, so that we don't have a scenario where some commissioners walk out and say that they were not involved in final tallying verification of the results. Mr. Speaker, Clause 23, which seeks to amend Section 44 of the Principal Act that talks about matters of procurement of technology. The issue of intellectual property rights to the technology will be vested in the commission. Mr. Speaker, this is very important. You know, during the election, the IBC cited in court that they could not allow access to its technology because the technology is intellectual property of the provider of the technology. And therefore, this can be an avenue to deny access to very important information by Kenyans who would wish to access that information. So this particular amendment is very progressive. Further to it, the supplier of the, or the associate of this supplier must not be people who are facing issues in their own jurisdiction, like they are guilty of violating the procurement laws, or they have committed a crime, or they have been involved in election malpractices in other countries. This section 44 that has been amended provides for that as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Clause 25, which seeks to delete Section 45 of the Principal Act. This Principal Act section, Mr. Speaker, talks about the conditions for recall by the public of members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, the current act makes it so difficult to recall a member of parliament. And this was put there deliberately by members of parliament trying to safeguard and beat around corners on the issue of recall. This section has now been removed, Mr. Speaker. So it is going to be very easy to recall a member of parliament, Mr. Speaker, including myself, if I'm not performing. Mr. Speaker, it goes on under Section 46, which has also been repealed to deal with all the conditions of recall under Section 45 and 46. Mr. Speaker, Section 28, no, Clause 28, seeks to repeal Section 74 of the Act to provide that disputes due to the nation will be the mandate of political parties tribunal and not IBC. During the election, Mr. Speaker, you have seen that on one hand, the tribunal is dealing with matters of dispute in political parties. On the other hand, IBC is doing the same. That is not the work of IBC. This amendment will ensure that only political parties tribunal will handle disputes between a candidate and his party or between political parties and not IBC. IBC role is misplaced, and that amendment heals that. Clause 29, Mr. Speaker, and amends Section 75 to provide that the election petition will terminate at the High Court for county assemblies. We should not have a scenario where the election petition for a county assembly member is taken all the way to Supreme Court. This law now provides that the case will terminate at the High Court. And the same applies, Mr. Speaker, to Section 85A, which is amended under Clause 32, to provide that the petition for members of parliament, senators, and governors will terminate at the Court of Appeal, so that the Supreme Court performs the role that the drafters of the Constitution envisaged to do, specific things, and not dealing with the election matters. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Clause 31, also, which amends Section 82 of the Principal Act, it also provides that access to information. That access to information upon a request to IBC shall be granted within 3 days for presidential election and 7 days for other position. I think for presidential election, because of the limited time, because it has to be done within a limited time. 3 days is a long period of time. I think this should be reduced to 1 day, Mr. Speaker, considering the time constraint in presidential election. Mr. Speaker, Clause 32 seeks to amend Section 85A of the Principal Act on the issue of decision of the court on petition for members of parliament. I had said that. And Mr. Speaker, Clause 33 amends Section 87 to provide for the setting up of an independent firm approved by Parliament to do evaluation of election, and a host of things will be done here, including reviewing the legal framework, reviewing the register of voters, reviewing the role of the media, reviewing the voter counting procedures. A host of things will be done, and that has to be done within 1 year after the election. Mr. Speaker, that is very progressive amendment, which will basically cure a lot of challenges we are going through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, election is so important, and I hope that this bill will help us deal with the electoral challenges we have been having in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I go back to the issue of IBC. IBC, and I want to address the courts. Please, you have every right to receive cases, to process cases, but also listen to what is happening outside the courts. The judicial notice of what is happening outside the courts. This country will be in a crisis if there will be need to have an IBC, and there is no IBC. We will have a major constitutional crisis. So I want to call upon the courts to help us to expedite the setting up of a selection committee so that we can appoint the new commissioners who can now conduct by-elections, who can also prepare. We are now just about 2 years and a few months to the next general election, and we don't have an IBC in place. And you remember Kriegler's report said that all preparations to the election must be completed at least 2 years before election. We don't even have an IBC. So we have not even started, Mr. Speaker. So this is a problem, and also the matter of cost of election, which must also be looked at, aren't in our election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I will support this bill, except of the results by IBC chairperson. I believe that if we want to heal the problem of Cherera 4, we must insist that the declaration of results by IBC chairperson must currency with the other commissioners, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Boni Khalwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to strongly support this bill, but with little tweaks here and there. And Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that Senator Kenyareport and Senator Osoti, members of this House, who I believe are seasoned and they give serious thought to legislation, are complaining that our elections are too expensive. If you think democracy is expensive, please go and try dictatorship. Please go and try military rule. You'll know the difference. And Mr. Speaker, I say this with maximum respect because I know for Kenyareport in 2007, when the country went bust because of flaws in electoral process, probably he was in kindergarten, so he has no idea how even, Mr. Speaker, sir, your own father, who was a senior member of this House, how they fought so hard to keep together. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to say that our process that looks expensive, it is because we are ahead of many other countries in the world. They're doing what we are doing today. I therefore want to thank the members of NADCO for this particular process that informed this bill. Mr. Speaker, I believe strongly that election